So today guys, we're going to be installing an aftermarket steering wheel and new turn signal in my son's 68 coupe. So to start off, we're going to remove the two screws from the back of the steering wheel here, as well as removing the turn signal selector. So we're going to pull these out with the standard Phillips head screwdriver. And we're going to go ahead and pull this out with an adjustable wrench. Next, this front piece will lift just straight out. Now we're going to take our 15/16 socket with an impact and get this nut off here. If we're lucky, this will lift straight out. So now I'm going to use the wheel puller. Next, we're going to remove these three Phillips head screws on the turn signal switch. Now we're going to come down here into the dash and undo the electrical connector. Next, we're going to pull off this metal plate that covers up the wires. Just kind of squeeze it and pull it down and out. Now before we can completely remove this turn signal switch, we're going to have to take this connector off, which is going to require us to depin it. Now I'd highly recommend at this point you take your camera off your phone, take a picture of this connector here before you start depinning it so you know which wires went into which holes. Now these pins have a little tang on them. We're going to take the round tool off this little depinning kit that I got off Amazon. It's going to slide down over the pin, kind of depress that tang, and allow us to slide them out. Now this part can be a little frustrating. Just be patient, you'll get them all. Now just slide off this rubber sleeve and the whole switch will slide right out. Now's a good time to compare the wire colors for both switches. Look at the manufacturer's manual for whoever made your switch, and it should have a cross-reference chart to help you put the wires back in the right spots. Now we're going to go ahead and feed the wires back through the hole here. It's easier to feed them one at a time than try to force them all in at once. Before I put the turn signal back on, I'm going to put a little white lithium grease here and on this hole in here. Before I reinstall this, I put a little white lithium grease around the base of the shaft and the little tip that sticks out. And it goes right back in the same way it came out. You can put your little emergency flasher back around the button. I'm going to reinstall the turn signal rod. Now this is what it should look like at this point. I will point out, if you have an aftermarket steering column, I had an issue with a ring that was behind here. This vehicle does not have that ring because this is a stock steering column. But it came from the factory just a speck out of alignment, and this mechanism right here was so hard to turn. So just keep that in mind, guys. If you guys have an aftermarket one and you have an issue, maybe it's that inner ring is not aligned directly around the shaft. Slide the wiring back in the sleeve right now. Reattach this bracket. So when I installed my last 9-bolt adapter, I did not understand why it came with 2 different size rings. Now I can see on the stock steering column, the gap is a lot bigger, so you're definitely want to go with the bigger ring. You can see when we slide that ring behind it, it does a great job of covering up that gap. I use a smaller ring like I used in my other car. That's obviously not going to work. So we're going to put this on with the bigger ring, and this little divot right here indicates the top. So pay attention when you're lining up your steering wheel. There is a line on there that should indicate when your steering wheel is straight. We're going to reinstall our nut. Now we're going to install our aftermarket steering wheel. Now we're going to install all 9 of these little Allen bolts. Also, these turn signal kits come with some roll pins. They can be put into these holes if they're needed to help cancel the turn signal. I didn't put it on this one. I'm sure when you're putting your steering wheel on, this notch and this little pin right here line up. On this particular horn button, I pulled the wires that came on it, and I'm just going to attach them to these 2. Instructions did say to put just a little bit of grease on this O-ring before installing the horn button. However, this thing seems pretty nice, it's brand new. Perhaps in the future, if I ever take it off, I will do that. Now the only thing left to do is to reconnect the wires on the bottom. So off camera, I went ahead and connected all the wires back on the bottom here. They ended up being identical color to color. I love it. I went from a 16-inch stock steering wheel down to a 14-inch. I have plenty of room underneath here to sit my knees without really struggling too hard. This is a non-tilt column, so that was a little bit of an issue. And steering seems to be a lot nicer now. Got a nice new feel, nice new look. Son loves it. Call this a job done.